You are listening to Love in Movement, a podcast where we share our unique expressions of living love in our daily life, inspired by messages in the book, A Course of Love.
Welcome, everyone, today to our podcast show, Love in Movement. Today's guest is Christina Strutt, and she is joining us from Westford, Massachusetts. So, welcome, Christina, to Love in Movement podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I wanted to introduce the topic here. The topic is the pause and the way of navigating the new. And Christina is going to share with us her experiences with the pause and how this became the only way for her in navigating the infinite realm of the new. And so I just want to read one thing at the back of paper that Christina had written and she shared with me. And Christina wrote that at the pause, there is no other way that I know of, Christina speaking. This is the way. And dare I say, nothing matters more, for all that is true, capital T, and lasting arises from the pause. So, yeah, I believe Christina has one line she's going to share with us from Course of Love, and then we'll kind of get started.
Yeah, this line is from Learning in the Time of Christ, part 1 from A Course of Love, where Jesus is talking to us about true dialogue. And he says, I ask you only to pause, to give the mind a rest, to enter a realm foreign to the mind, and yet beloved to the heart. And that's why, for me, when we are in such uncertain, walking into the unknown all the time, it's like the only way to kind of just stop, pause, and breathe and go into that place of stillness. There's lots and lots of names for it. And we were just talking, and I'm just going to read some of the other words that I used. I call it the pause. And that place of stillness I refer to as the 0 point pause. Mary Reed calls it isness. Mari Perron calls it joining in union and relationship and being in dialogue. A Course in Miracles calls it the holy instant. And Soul in the Driver's Seat and Journey into the Unknown calls it the holy instant as well, which is what this Course in Miracles says. So it's just that place from which everything arises.
Yeah.
You know?
And from there, you came up with a little phrase that you had been using for a long, long time. Do you want to say a little bit about that little phrase and how and what your experience of that and how that works for you?
Yeah, it's like this evolved over the years. I mean, it began very early on when I was doing business consulting, which was breathe, listen in, and trust yourself. Because, in the fast-paced business world, when you're working, stuff's going on, you're just moving, moving, moving. Is there a chance to pause, And sometimes the only time you can do it is when you take a break to go to the restroom or something. That's what I used to do with A Course in Miracles, pause and remember the lesson, stuff like that. Well, over the years, it's evolved over 15 years, actually, of trying to live in that way. It evolved into pause, breathe, listen in, feel, receive, trust yourself, and act. So if I can just talk briefly to each of those things, which is kind of the understanding because of the experience working with it, it's almost like I can sort of do this in a matter of seconds now when I remember. And I want to say there's nothing special about me, okay? I just as often don't remember and barge in and say things I regret saying or whatever. But when I do remember, to take that pause, it really does work. So the pause part is it's just stopping, you know? Like right now, I could just stop and I can gaze out the window here and take a breath. And just kind of, for me, it drops down into my belly, way low down in my body. and I feel that sort of like an ocean of love down there, and I kind of dissolve into it. So I think a lot of it for me, because my mind is very active a lot of the time, is melting those thoughts all the way down into that ocean of love through the heart and into the love. And we, Course of Love talks about joining heart and mind, of course. So that's that
Yeah.
place of stillness. So that's kind of like the most important thing in this list of words. And then the next thing is listen in. And listen in means, so I mean, I could describe it in a couple of ways. One is A Course of Love talks about feelings are messengers. They bring you messages of truth, you know? So part of it is tuning into what I'm actually feeling. But then how do you tune into that? And I tune into it by using my body's senses. What am I actually sensing in my body? And actually, as I'm saying this right now, Lynn, I'm remembering that this is actually the first step in the art of thought, to feel everything with the body's senses and your feelings. It's like so simple in the sense of if I close my eyes, it's just different. But if you open your eyes, then you simply, I run through, you know, bringing myself into the present means right here, right now. What am I seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching? And it's amazingly grounding for me to just even speak it out loud if I'm on my own in a place where I can speak it out loud. But even running through it inside of me, you know, there's no other way I know of better for me that works for me to bring me into the present. There have been so many times in my life where my thoughts are racing, I'm terrified of something about to happen, feeling really anxious. And if I sit down with a mug of tea, and I remember doing this, just literally seeing my tea and saying, I'm holding a mug of tea. The steam is rising. I can smell the tea. And then I take a sip and I'm tasting it. That kind of thing. I can hear the birds outside. And I'm sitting in this chair. And then a little bit what comes with that is a feeling of gratitude. It really does. It's a very settling thing for me. And I remember decades ago, in the early 90s, some consultants were brought into the corporation I was working for, and I was very stressed out back then and very, very fast moving. And this woman said to me, you really should go see this person. And it was so woo-woo for me at the time. She was actually a sound healer. And she wanted me to just, after the session, she said, just sit quietly for a few moments here and there during your day. And I said, I can't do that. I'm so busy. And she said, well, you just have to do that. I said, well, I can't. Well, don't you drink a cup of tea? And she said, just sit with that cup of tea. And well, I said, I don't really drink tea that way. If I'm drinking tea, I'm sipping and working at the same time. And the truth, she was so right. But could I do it back then?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's come over the years. I mean, with the Course of Love, you know, and all of that. So that feeling thing I wanted to say is really the first step of the art of thought, which is your body senses, what you're feeling. And then somehow, because you're in that space of the ocean of love, you remember your divine self and the relationship with both. And then the response arises. And that's the receiving part, I think. When you're in that, the next step is receive. It's just like you don't have to do anything. You can just stop right here for a moment and rest. It is about resting and receiving. And then the next thing is super important, which is trust yourself. Now, somewhere in the Course of Love, I know it talks about the difference between faith in the divine, in the divinity, in your divine self, but it needs to meld, it needs to join with trust in the self form for the true power to flow. So this is what this is about. Trust yourself. And then, of course, respond. Act is the last one. And sometimes there is no outside action. It's just to just keep going, take the next step. Anyway, all of that can happen in a few seconds, or when there's more time, it can take longer.
I wanted to look at like the value of this because I've been practicing a lot of this pausing too, because I often move way too fast.
Yeah, well, I think I'd like to do both because for me, in my experience, the obstacle for me, the hardest thing to notice and work with has been this tendency to push away, quote, bad feelings, unquote, to push away bad sensations, unquote. So it could be physical pain, it could be feelings of anxiety or fear or worry, as you said, things from the past or things from the future. But that's the very first step. When I drop into my belly, this 0 point stillness, I call it the ocean of love, I'm then able to notice all these things that are bubbling within me and then to welcome them in. And one of the things I found really helpful in the last couple of years is to almost see them all, body sensations, feelings, as like people, like, oh, there you are again,
Mhm.
and welcoming them and saying, there's space here for you. Come on in. It's okay. You can rest because all of it is energy. If I now bounce to the other end of the concept that we really are electromagnetic fields of energy, forming and informing each other. That's the science of what we are, bodies. But the thing about inviting all of these energies in is that they just want to be seen and heard and welcomed, and then they can rest. And once all of that is resting with me in this ocean of love, that is that 0 point field, the infinite field, the field of infinite possibilities, then stuff can begin to happen.
Yeah.
Stuff begins to rise, whether it's a solution to a problem or what to do next. And sometimes, when I am sitting for a bit, and this was what you referred to, Lynn, that very first experience of this was probably in 92 when I'd get up early morning and read A Course in Miracles, and do the lesson. I was reading the text and going through the lessons, at the same time. I think it took me like 7 years to read the entire text, honestly, bit by bit. But then I do the lesson. And one time when I was just sitting with the lesson, I was gazing out. That's my favorite way. I don't really do formal meditation. I just sit and gaze out the window into the near distance, I call it. I kind of let my eyes go a little gentle so things get a little blurry. And I just sit there and I'm still. And this one time, all of a sudden, I was looking at the trees. It was winter time, and so there were no leaves. I could see some distance because we live on a bit of a hill. And the whole tree line began to like shimmer. I call it the shimmering since then. It was like the light got different and it was like sparkly and shimmering. And then it actually began to go wavy, like in the old style televisions when the picture is going wrong, you need to climb the roof and adjust the antenna. It kind of went wavy. And I don't know what it was. I often wonder what it would have been like if I'd stayed in it. But of course, my mind kicked in immediately. It was like, oh, what is this? And boom, it stopped. But ever since then, it's gotten easier and easier and deeper to settle into the shimmering. And occasionally the wavy thing happens. And it sort of like signals to me that it's all an illusion and that I am creating it, is coming from within me kind of thing. But definitely that sensation of light-filled spaciousness, the heart expanding.
Yeah.
It's very much a full-bodied
Yeah.
experience. There's no separation between what's inside me, there's no boundaries to my body. And out of that, just sitting in stillness, so much has come. All the things
Yeah.
I've done work on and offered the world in my writings, in the publishing online that we've done with Soul in the Driver's Seat and Journey and Arrival. I would never have done any of those things. And things I've done for Course of Love for so many years. It all came. I said how I feel it in my belly, in my sort of way low down. I call it my belly womb. I wonder if that's the access point that A Course of Love is so clear about, that each of us has to find our own access point. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The way I get it is that we really don't need an access point to unity because we're in unity. We're
Okay.
always in unity. We're never separate from the unity of God, the unity of love. But what I got from Mari in the Course of Love, as she was channeling that through the voice of Jesus, is that because of the conditioning and other things that we've been through, the awareness is not always there. And it's a pointer to me of like, where is your most natural way of feeling this unity?
In the
And of course,
body, right? It's
yeah,
kind of getting it into the human part of the divine human being.
yeah. The most easy way for the most natural way that it feels to you, where you can rest in that awareness of unity, Christ consciousness, or Course in Miracles lesson, I rest in God, which I really love that workbook lesson. I rest in God. And when you do that, not only are you filling yourself up with the healing energy, letting it expand in yourself, but it radiates out to everyone.
All of the love and healing that's wanting to land here on the earth can only come through our willingness, through my willingness to be available to it. And that sort of transformation from energy, light energy, love energy, whichever way you want to look at it. I tend to use the word light if someone needs a more sort of masculine or scientific way, and I use love when we're more into the feminine way of talking about it. But it's the same thing to me. Coming through has to come through our bodies. That's why, for me, the pause is so important, because it
Yeah.
does bring the body fully into this moment, and the body is transforming. Don't ask me how. I just know, I feel things, whatever. But there is something very real happening, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
in these moments where we allow that energy to flow, I feel the transformation is happening, or the transmogrification, I should say, because I love that word, which is it is what the Course of Love calls the elevated self of form. And it happens bit by bit by bit, moment by moment by moment,
Yeah.
every moment that we are fully present, as you just said, to this
Yeah.
moment, including the body.
I was going to say elevated self of form is capital S self. So that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
that's the
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the true self. And
Yeah.
it says in A Course in Miracles too that the body is a communication device. I mean,
Yes.
it's a means of
Right.
communication, and it can be used for holy purposes when seen as that. It's the vehicle or the instrument,
Right.
through which God's love flows.
That's what we're here for, to share, express, and grow love, to grow more God, grow love. So,
Mm-hmm.
and actually that reminds me of this, the whole of all of these texts we're talking about. Course in Miracles, the Course of Love, the Journey into the Unknown, Arrival, Soul, all of it can be summed up. And in fact, this phrase came out of Journey into the Unknown and Arrival, which simply says, love unconditionally and
Mm-hmm.
bless indiscriminately. And let
Beautiful.
me just make to say that, to me, the word blessing means that beautiful pausing, seeing, joining in union and relationship. That, and then the love just flows. I mean, that is the blessing. And you and I sitting here talking right now, we're joining, we're sharing, we're clear pools flowing into each other. And that is a blessing on you. It's a blessing on me. It's a blessing on all the equipment between you and me, every speck of the electromagnetic fields, the waves. It doesn't matter. And it's blessing every single person who listens to this. Our
Mhm.
voices convey that. There is no separation. And in that joining, everyone is going to receive whatever experience is in the highest interest for them in that moment.
The pause, you say, it's a rapid refresh that replenishes your soul wherever you are in the day. And it's much like a refresh button on a wonky web page. You have to refresh it. And then I love this too, where you were saying that the pause just leads you back into the flow of life. That's another valuable
Right.
aspect of it for me as well. And obstacles dissolve and that kind of thing. And everything seems kind of flowing. And so you said too that like this, you said that pause, you believe it or feel that pause is why David, the shepherd king, in the Bible, in Psalm 23 said, was prompted to lie down in green pastures and led beside still waters, for it allowed God to restore his soul.
And as you were talking, I just want to say, this blessing indiscriminately, I've been feeling that this is really what is meant by dialogue. I'm trying to remember. I'm sitting here trying to remember. Creation is a dialogue to which we have not yet responded.
Mm-hmm.
And dialogue, as in in A Course of Love, my understanding of it is not just two people talking, it's dialogue with every particle of everything. So
Mm-hmm.
if we are in that flow, that flowing as clear pools, we are in flow with our computers, with our keyboards, with our iPhones, with our cups of tea, with the
Yeah.
chair we're sitting in. And that is that state. It's not a passive state. It's a very full and rich and bubbling with potential state, out of which comes the action, the new inventions, solutions, all that stuff. And I literally feel that in my body. I mean, I have written
Mm-hmm.
very infrequently these days, and it literally surges through me from the base of my belly like a fire kind of starts. And sometimes I feel it and I think, oh God, here we go, and I know it's coming, something is coming. And then,
Mm-hmm.
and then I write. And the same thing happens when I just know this is the next step to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like right now, I'm just so excited. So I'm just going to have to say this for Soul in the Driver's Seat. We've just launched a podcast. And that literally came like that. It was like, I had, so this is actually, I'm glad I'm saying this because I wanted to remember to say that sometimes the pause can be a bit longer, like 5 minutes if you have time. And sometimes it can be really long. So when I had a very busy summer and traveled to the UK in September for a couple of different things, came home, and I was just like sick also, probably had COVID. But I sat literally in stillness pretty much all of October. And it was right at the end of that time that this surged through like, okay, we're going to do this podcast. We're going to use AI. We're going to do this. It just came through as a way to reach the world in the way I want to reach it. Everyone knows we're all busy. It can be just a few breaths. It can be a few minutes. And I think in that newsletter, Lynn, didn't I share one practice from somebody, friend of mine?
Yeah, you did. There was a
It was
little
about
guided,
5 minutes.
yeah,
I think it was about five
guided
minutes.
meditation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and she really just okay, if I boil it down to one sentence, it's simply take a deep breath in and then breathe
Mm-hmm.
out. Like it's almost like breathing out three quarters. And then there's that space at the end of the out breath where you literally fall into the stillness. It's a sort of an empty place where you haven't fully forced all the breath out. You don't need to. Nor is it time to breathe again. You don't have to breathe in again. And that's kind of, for me, the easiest way to drop into that 0 point stillness in just one breath. But she does a beautiful job. But anyway, that's
Yeah, I had listened and that really liked it. And she does the pause first and then, the in breath and then the out breath. And then before you breathe in again,
that's right.
the pause after the out breath. And then
Yeah.
that's just like this place of utter stillness.
Here's a question. We've said so many beautiful ways of doing this. So, what do you think stops people from doing it?
Yeah. The pause.
Yeah.
I just believe it's a lot of conditioning, and the world is, a fast-paced world. But I do feel like there has to be some kind of willingness
Yes.
to
Willingness. Yeah.
a willingness for this, because if you're not willing, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's wrong,
No.
but
No.
if you're not willing to do it, then you're probably not going to do it, because forcing yourself has never worked for me.
No. Although I was just thinking as you were talking about social media and all that, wouldn't it be fun if every time you picked up your phone, it just pops right in your face and says, pause, breathe.
Yeah, that would be
Every
good.
time you go
Yeah.
to Facebook, or Facebook is old school, but Twitter or whatever, Instagram, it said pause, breathe, and then lets you
Mhm.
go. That's where the power lies. I mean, that's really that kind of power, that the not the old school power over top down hierarchical power. No, we're talking about the power of the web, the connections, the power, the
Mhm.
infinite power of the field. That's where the power lies, in that intersection, in that moment. The entirety of the one cosmic intelligence is available to you. Why the body feels so important to me this year, especially, is that cosmic. You know how they used to say the space was empty, that it's a vacuum, but now they know it's filled with plasma. It's 99.99999% plasma, which is what we are. There's no boundary between our bodies and that. That's what we're talking about. It is literally coming in a way through our bodies and the earth. I talk about the mycelial network that connects every living plant and tree. It's all communicating. You know, we are one with the earth, with Mother Earth, and with each other, and with the cosmos. And all of that's available to us. Isn't that amazing to think about it? And all available to us through this pause.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the Course of Love, union and relationship. And I've heard this in other teachers as well. It's a paradox. God can't really, I'm using God, you can say infinite mind or whatever you want. The universe doesn't really know itself without being in relationship.
I feel like I've painfully and come a long way from those days in 92 when I would put the workbook lesson from A Course in Miracles in my bra. And then when I went to the restroom, take my pause and sit with it and really let it set. And we can do that now. So,
Yeah, and I was going to say Eckhart Tolle, he's big on all this. The Power Now is his book, but he also has a book. A lot of people haven't read it. It's called A New Earth. And it's about resting in our own beingness and the feeling realization of that beingness and how that does radiate out. And as the Course of Miracles says, you know, when I'm healed, I'm never healed alone. And that's what he speaks to, the sharing and the unity and the relationship of all of it.
I do think that for me at least, and this is one of the things I hope I'll be able to do over the next year and a quarter, is to wrap up all of my public facing work so that I can drop more and more into that being and stillness and move only as prompted, because I feel that so much more sharing is happening in that stillness. It's a powerful, very much alive feeling. And honestly, in the last 40 minutes, hour, whatever we've been talking, I've talked more than I do most days. I really certainly don't want to be typing emails. And I write very little. And I am not big on talking much these days either. You can get me going if you ask me a question. Trust me, I can talk. But my happy place is breathing into that ocean of love and just dissolving into it. Now, preferably on a beach in Hawaii, but you know, my winter in New England is okay too, you know.
The thing is, we can take the pause anywhere we are. We can learn to be still and present. And yeah, I was going to say, we had spoken about that too. Is one day maybe we won't be using words anymore, speaking. It's all because we're emitting that energy anyway. Even if I'm sitting in stillness and I'm all by myself, I'm still sharing.
Well, maybe I'll just finish with saying we really are beautiful beings of love. We really are the energy of love. So fortunate to be here at this time with these bodies who are growing and learning with us and transforming into the energy of love too in form. So I feel like this pause, in whatever way works for anyone who's listening, find your own way. It just opens us to more and more of that love. And we're like transducers, bringing it through into the earth and into the field right here for everyone. So it's kind of beautiful for myself, but it's also in service to everyone. And giving and receiving are as one. The flow is as one. So yeah. And I assume you'd share the link to what I wrote so people can read a little bit more about what more coherently said a few months ago, which would be wonderful.
There's a description in the box there. It'll be underneath the podcast and they could look at the description. Yeah.
That's great. So thank you. Thank you for letting me talk so much. Anytime. I love talking when I have a question to answer, but thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed this. Thanks, Lynn.
So have I. And thank you once again. And peace, love, grace, and blessings. Namaste.
Bless you, darling. Love you. Bye bye.